And our Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 Finance Committee meeting. May we please have the roll?
Honorable Mayor Tack.
Here.
Chairman Weber.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
Here.
Alderman Powers.
Here.
Alderman Levert. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. Our first item of business this evening is consideration of the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on November 10th, 2025. Any comments on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Second item of business this evening is our grant program update and recommendations, which will be presented this evening by Diane Hall, Assistant Finance Director. In 2021 of January, the City Council approved agreements with the Ferguson Group for grant research and Carahsoft Technology for e-Civis grant administration software. And Diane tonight will give a report, the fifth annual report on activities completed in 2025 and a summary of recommendations for this fiscal year. We did have a report in our packet to reference. Diane, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Finance Committee. I will be presenting the fifth annual grant report. Just for some background, in January of 21, City Council did approve a contract with the Ferguson Group and e-Civis. The Ferguson Group does provide consulting services to help identify grants for the city, do any reviews of grant applications if needed, and help departments really hone in on different opportunities. The e-Civis software does help staff track the grants throughout the years and to track where they are in the progress, whether they're pending, awarded, and if there's any changes and expenses associated with these grants, which does help with the audit process. And I will also be reviewing some program recommendations for 2026. Over the last 5 years, the city has been awarded $16.6 million in grants. To note, in 2022, we did receive grants for Waukegan Everett, Waukegan Wesley, and we did have COVID money during that year for grant processing. In 2023, we were awarded the Deer Path Streetscape project. This slide just shows all the notable grants that we've received over the years. To highlight, in 2025, we did receive $1.7 million for the Lake Woodbine Bridge, and the police were awarded a number of grants totaling over $200,000. And the Lake Woodbine Bridge is the second grant we did receive for this project. So the city's proposed 5-year CIP budget program for $78 million. Of that, notably only almost $10 million is funded by grants, which is 12.79% of the 5-year projected budget. To review and compare the 2024 program to the 2025 program, the city was notified of 92 grants. We did apply for 10, and we were awarded 8 compared to 2 last year. We do have 4 that are pending, and we received almost $2 million compared to $200,000 last year. So we did see a nice uptick in grant funding this year. So last year we provided goals for 2025, which were to pursue identified projects by staff and to really emphasize projects that are identified in the CIP program and to update needs assessments through the Ferguson Group. So the chart does show there were a number of grants that did not have grant opportunities identified, but the Lake Woodbine Bridge did receive $1.7 million. We do have an application still pending for the fire station renovation. And for the Ferguson Group for needs assessment, there are a number of departments that did meet with the Ferguson Group to go over their priorities and to really hone in on which grant applications or notifications that we do receive. So for proposed goals for 2026, we are still looking at the CIP process to identify projects that may not move forward without grant funding, to really try and find that funding to get the projects to go through. And this year we're going to really work on applying for earmark funding again. The Ferguson Group does have a consultant that prioritizes the earmark process and will review our CIP projects to really find projects that are highly likely to be funded. The Seminary Ravine is a project that we did get awarded funding through this process. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just one question. When we look out far in our forecasted CIP projects, maybe a big project in the future, 5, 6 years from now, we may not need a grant funding today, but does it behoove us to start looking at where the opportunities are, particularly when we're going to undertake a project that we only are going to undertake once every 25 or 30 years? We do bridges all the time, so we're looking at those every year. So my question is, for a big project that we don't do very often, should we start looking now?
When we do review with the Ferguson Group,
Yeah.
we'll identify different categories of projects. So we're always looking for opportunities no matter where we're at in processing. So we would definitely keep looking far out, which is why with the CIP projects, we always provide them the 5-year forecast. So at least to keep looking out, especially when we have engineering in 1 year and the project funding in the next year. We're always constantly looking at those every single year when we meet with them. Usually in January, we start a planning process to look at those out years.
All right. Thank you very much.
And I can just add to that point, echoing Diane's comments, we strategically only target grants for projects that have been identified in the capital plan, even if it's in some of the out years, rather than chasing projects that might sound nice but really weren't otherwise identified as a priority. And then one of the reasons I think we've been so successful in our hit rate on these was the strategic decision made about 4 or 5 years ago to split engineering, design, and construction into separate fiscal years. There were instances prior to that where we tried to do it all in the same year. And I think having design completed and shovel-ready projects is something that has been, I think, viewed very favorably by various agencies that are awarding grants. And so the only challenge to the question you asked, I think we always look at them, but generally speaking, we have a much higher likelihood of receiving grants if there's already design work done. And so usually once we have design done, then we can go out and seek grants. In some cases, we can have design done and construction may be several years off on the horizon. Sometimes it's shorter.
So Diane, if we didn't have the Ferguson Group, how would this work?
It's with the staff time, since we do not have a dedicated staff person to look for grants, it would be to the departments to continually look out for grants. And they're not always at the same time of the year, so it would just be having to constantly look at that. And we tried a few years ago to have another group help identify grants, and it wasn't as productive as going through the RFP process. And this is all they do is look for grants. They're finding federal grants, state grants, foundation grants, things that we would never think to look for. So it just finding different possibilities.
So their unique database is different than ours, or what would be available to us, or they just have more time to drill into it?
They have, that's their expertise. That's all they do are grants. And they have, and they give us updates also when the federal government is changing and, putting, holds on spending. So they're always giving us updates on where we stand, when grants will be received, and how it affects us if they withhold funding. So it does provide additional information besides looking for grants.
Great, thank you.
And they are compensated how? A flat fee or a percentage of grants obtained?
It is
Or both?
flat fee, and that contract will be on the city council agenda this evening. And, but it is a flat fee. If they do anything additional, it's on an hourly rate, and there would be a separate side contract with the Ferguson Group.
Do they help write the grant applications?
If we were to ask for,
Okay.
that would be a separate,
Okay, but we haven't needed to?
we have not needed to at this time.
Good.
Thank you for that discussion. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
We've got a presentation coming up next for the Open Space Lands Acquisition and Development Grant for South Park, which is going to be presented by Corey Wierma. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Weber and members of the Finance Committee. Tonight, I wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick update on Phase 2 of the South Park Master Plan. Last Wednesday, we were notified from OSLOD and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources that we were awarded the grant for Phase 2 of the South Park Master Plan. We did receive the maximum $600,000 for this grant. It's my understanding that it was a competitive grant cycle. They had $36 million to hand out. That was distributed over 67 communities. And we were 1 out of 3 in Lake County to receive this grant. So it's great news. It's a project that staff is excited to move forward with. So I just wanted to go through a couple slides here that shows, what does Phase 2 bring to the park? And everything that's proposed in Phase 2 is outlined in red. We'll start in the bottom corner here. That'll be that's where the existing playground currently is right now. And adjacent to that will be a splash pad in a hammock grove. The splash pad's about 2,000 square feet, similar size to the one that's out at Townline Park. In the upper right-hand corner, we have ADA access, a new ADA access from the McClory bike path to the park itself. And as we go further south, we get into, we're adding a second batting cage for Field 2, which is the north field. And then we are adding a smaller open-air picnic shelter adjacent to or just west of the baseball field. And around the shelter itself, we'll have some bag toss games and some table games. We're going to keep the same access point from the McClory bike path that's existing there now. So that will stay. And then we have, in the South Woods area, we will have a woodland trail that connects, that's about a quarter mile that'll connect through. And it'll connect to the existing trail that winds around the entire park. There will be a fitness station added to the additional 3 that we have right now. And then there will be baseball field improvements. The field is set to shift about 6 feet to the north. There'll be new netting, safety netting for foul balls on the first base side. And the reason that we're shifting it is for the opportunity that we could add a road in the cul-de-sac that you see in the rendering here. Currently, the OSLOD grant does not allow road construction to be part of the grant. So staff is looking at this potential road and cul-de-sac turnaround area with roughly about 45 additional parking spaces as a separate project. And we're looking to bring that to council in your workshop upcoming in March to discuss it further. So project timeline, we do have money budgeted for an RFP. So we're looking to issue an RFP here coming up in March. And then at the same time, at the beginning of March, and then we'll bring in interviewees to go through the RFP process. We're hoping to bring back that decision to council in April to get them on board so we can execute the contract in May 1st. And then we're hoping to have design completed by mid-September so we can have a solid budget number going into our CIP planning for next year. and then go out to bid for construction in January or February, and hopefully start to break ground in May of 2027. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Alderman Novit?
I just have a comment. I've lived in that neighborhood for 32 years. This is the park my kids grew up in. And boy, I wish it had been like this when they were little. This is wonderful. And with all the new young families that have moved in the area east of the park and up by me, it's going to make such a big difference for families. So thank you.
Sure, welcome.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Alderman Powers?
Corey, great news. Thanks, thanks for the information. And if I'm not mistaken, we received this grant when we did phase 1 also,
We did.
right? So credit to you and your team for sticking with that methodology to following through, because it's obviously makes a huge difference. So thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Corey, thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item of business this evening is investment program updates and recommendations presented by Finance Director Katie Skibby. And this is going to review the investment policy and investment procedures manual that the Finance Department has expanded the city's investment portfolio to include certificates of deposit and treasury obligation. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. The city's investments are governed by the investment policy as well as the Illinois Public Funds Investment Act. Both of these instruments prioritize safety above all else, the preservation of capital to make sure no tax dollars are lost as we are investing funds. And then the second priority is liquidity, as we want to make sure we can meet any operating needs with cash. And then lastly, it is the market rate of return we try to obtain. Here we have a list of authorized investments. You'll see there is no equities on this list. The city is not allowed to invest in equities. That is different for the police and fire pension as well as the cemetery. But we do invest in treasury obligations, money markets, and certificates of deposit. Every year, the finance director comes to the finance committee to discuss the segmentation of our cash and then benchmark confirmation and selection. The segmentation is first in liquidity, and this segment meets all of our operating needs and makes sure that any reasonable expense can be paid for immediately. And then the core segmentation, which is where we get into our longer term investments, and that's where we try to reach the market rate of return. The benchmarks are included in your quarterly investment report. This is what we look at to see if we are hitting where we need to when we are doing our investments. So that's what we will be doing today. This slide just shows 3 different rates, and I apologize, down at the bottom you can't really see, but the blue is the Fed funds rate that is set by the Federal Reserve Bank. The orange is actually Lake Forest deposit rate, so that's what we get with Lake Forest Bank and Trust. And then the green is the 3-year Treasury note. So as you can see, all 3 of these rates move together. Sometimes bigger differences than others. But then also on this slide, we highlight in 2017, we did a big overhaul of the investment policy. And then in 2019, we contracted with MBS and eConnect Direct to begin trading directly with them. And then we began buying CDs in 2020 and treasuries in 2024. This is just a screenshot of the eConnect Direct platform. This program is set up with our investment policy. So when staff go into the platform to purchase CDs or treasuries, it doesn't show us anything that doesn't conform with our investment policy. It also checks FDIC insurance levels, which you would think would be very easy. Everybody knows it's 250,000, but when you're buying multiple CDs, you might see them several times. It's important to make sure you haven't bought two of the same CDs. So, and then here I'm just showing our current U.S. Treasury yields. So this is as of January 15th. For a while, we had an inverted yield curve, and staff was not investing in U.S. Treasuries. That is no longer the case. We have a normal yield curve, so staff is continuing to invest in U.S. Treasuries. This slide shows our year-end cash as of at the end of 2025 and at the end of 2024. The cash balances, and then where they are invested. So the majority of our funds are with Lake Forest Bank and Trust. Those are our most liquid accounts. And then we have about 10% in CDs and 20% in treasuries. Here you can see the maturities of all of our CDs and treasuries. The city's intent is to ladder our investments. We want to stagger maturity dates, which would reduce interest rate risk, and also make sure that we have cash on hand when we need it for larger capital projects. The later maturities, the 2039, 2042, and 2044, those are all U.S. Treasuries. And then we get to our segmentation. So at the January 21st, 2025 Finance Committee meeting, the committee decided to change the segmentation for that first band for the general fund, flex fund, water operating, liability insurance, and self-insurance from 40% to 50%. So that strategy was not implemented this year with the transition of the finance director that slipped through the cracks, but staff is now working with MBS and other agencies to increase our core investments. You'll see that right there, we are currently at 38%, which if we had kept the core segment at 40% would be right about where we needed to be. But so we will be doing some more investing in the next month to bring that number up a bit. The next band, the park and public land, motor fuel tax, capital improvement, that's actually a little over our goal. So we'll be allocating that fund as well to try to get it back down to 20%. And then the last band, the Parks and Rec Special Recreation Band, is right on the money at 30%. Moving forward, when we're looking at what our recommendation is for 2026, we do want to keep the segmentation the same. I think that the idea of moving from 40 to 50 last year was a solid one, but we're not looking to make any other moves this year. This would allow for a maximum of $44 million in investments, which would be about 37% of our $119 million total. Okay. And then these are the benchmarks that we have been using. We do not have any recommended changes to the benchmarks this year. These are benchmarks that work very well with what we are allowed to invest in, and I would recommend that we keep them the same unless there's any suggestions for adding additional benchmarks. So with that, we are looking to approve the segmentation recommendations and the benchmarks for 2026.
Yeah, Katie, just anytime you hear that stuff fell through the cracks, the first thing that comes to mind is to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm assuming we have a process in place that would prevent that from happening. Just a communication breakdown, or somebody didn't follow through, or what was the circumstance?
The January 21st meeting was actually when Director Holub retired. So I think that was the disconnect is just the timing of when that happened.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and acknowledge and own that too. To Director Skibby's point, the change that was adopted last year occurred at Director Hollob's last meeting. The changes that would have then been implemented over the course of the last fiscal year should have been added to the to-do list, if you will. But that's ultimately on me that didn't happen, but it's been identified as of about a month ago, and we'll correct that as we move forward this year.
Okay.
Alderman Novit?
Just following up on John's question, do you make a change every year, or do you just wait and see what looks right and make a determination on an as-needed basis? It doesn't seem like any of the other changes are, it's not something that gets done every year, is it?
That is correct. We look at it every year. We don't change it every year.
Okay.
I mean, from that slide with the changes, you can tell we're moving in the direction of investing more of our funds.
Right.
But no, it does not happen every
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't speak with specificity as to when the last change in terms of council policy was prior to last year. It had been some time, but as we've been able to establish healthy reserves, we're comfortable that we have enough liquidity to meet our day-to-day, operating expenses, payroll, vendor, accounts payable and whatnot. And above and beyond that, the discussion that occurred last year was ensuring we could otherwise maximize returns. It's because we have healthy reserves, we felt comfortable making the recommendation last year to increase our core exposure, but it's fairly infrequent. I think that's the only time in my tenure that I can recall us doing it.
Any other questions? We do have a recommended action this evening, which is approval of the staff recommendations for segmentation, benchmarks, and investment strategy for 2026. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. As we move into the last couple points for our meeting this evening, under other business, just informationally, we have, of course, the flash report, which is published on the city's website. If there's any questions, contact our finance director. We have our 5-year capital improvement plan update, which was fiscal year 27 budget item. Following our November 10th budget workshop, the staff has continued to work on finalization of our fiscal year 27 to 31 capital improvement plan. And we had an updated draft with changes in the November budget workshop highlighted. Did anyone have any questions or comments on that? No. Also was included was a draft innovation and technology 5-year plan, which was a fiscal year 27 budget item. Did anyone have any any questions? Go to Cam. Any questions on that? None at this time. Wonderful. Is there anybody in the public that, I'm sorry, John, did you have? Okay. Anybody in the public that would like to come forth and address the Finance Committee? Okay. Seeing none, I will go ahead and look for a motion to adjourn this evening.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll just point out our next meeting is March 9th, and that'll be a workshop meeting at Dickinson Hall. Thank you.